Well, gang, it's finally here. All of the big announcements were shared today via the Elder Scrolls Legends websites, and there was a lot of amazing, awesome information that I want to cover. There's talk about expansions, there's some new cards teased, there's mobile release schedule, so even though Bethesda continues to make their announcements on Thursdays, which are rough on me because I work both my jobs, I have literally come home, rushed right to my computer so that I can start cutting this video because I've just been overflowing with excitement all day long and I want to talk about it. So let's just jump right into it. Alright, so there were two articles posted today that reveal new info, and we're going to talk about them both. I'm going to put links to both of the articles in the video description, so let's just assume that you haven't seen them. Maybe you've been on vacation, maybe you're like me and you work a long day and you're just now getting home and my video is the first you're seeing, but whatever the case may be, if you want to go check out the articles, links will be in the description. We're also going to go through them together here, so feel free to tag along. Alright. The game is officially out of beta for PC. I think that shouldn't really come as a surprise to many people. A lot of us felt like it could have been out of beta a long time ago, but it is finalized. It's here. We are no longer considered in a beta for PC. Hooray, we made it. We did it, gang. Our game is released. But beyond just saying like, hey, we're not in beta anymore, they made some other announcements, not related to PC necessarily, but more about like tablet and mobile and so forth. So we're going to do a quick rundown. According to this right here, hoping you can see it on screen, but if not, iPad, March 23rd. So if you own an iPad and you haven't already went to the Canadian region to get the beta test version, iPad should be available March 23rd. Android tablets, tentatively scheduled for April. They do not have an exact date yet, but Android tablets is April. So the reason they're doing tablets first is because it's more screen real estate, so it's a little bit easier to develop the game for, bigger screens. Mac OS is May. So there you go. And finally, mobile phones, it just says early summer. So early summer, if it was May, it would have probably been included with the Mac OS, so we have to assume at least the earliest would be June, but early summer could also mean potentially like July, right? So I'm probably gonna just say, June, July. It also just says mobile phones. It doesn't say like Android phone and iOS phone, so there is a chance that you see like a phased rollout where maybe it comes to iOS first and then Android phones second. I do remember when Fallout Shelter came out, for example, it was on iOS first before it was on Android, so we will see. But right now, mobile phones, early summer. So iPad March 23rd, Android tablets is April, Mac OS is May, and mobile is early summer. Now, beyond just that, right, now that we're out of beta, we can start talking about things like expansions because we're no longer in beta. So they went ahead and they announced that on April 5th, right, so if we scroll down here, on April 5th, The Fall of the Dark Brotherhood is a brand new story that will feature new solo PvE content, more than 20 missions spread across 3 maps, as well as over 40 new cards. So right now you can pre-order all 3 maps. If you pre-order, you also get a bonus mount for Elder Scrolls Online. You also get a premium card of one of the, cards that come in the PvE content, right? So there's 40 new cards. You get a premium version of one of the cards. In fact, it's one of the ones that's been teased, and we'll cover that in a little bit. So if you pre-order, you get some bonus stuff, but they have also said that you will be able to buy the content with in-game gold. The big talk or rumor right now is that each map is going to be purchasable, right? So again, if I reread this, it says more than 20 missions spread across 3 maps. So likely it'll be each map will be individually purchasable. So it's going to be very similar to adventures in Hearthstone, it sounds like, if you're familiar with those. But that's coming April 5th, and that is really exciting. That's like right around the corner. It's actually less than a month away already, and I'm really looking forward to how that is going to shake things up. I'm personally looking forward to making some videos on working your way through the PvE content. I had started to make similar videos for Hearthstone Adventures, and I look forward to doing it for this game as well, so that's exciting. It also says we have a whole host of new features and functionality in store for 2017, and we'll continue with regular releases of new stories and full card sets every few months this year and beyond. So that's in addition to some of the other things that they also revealed in the article. So other amazing things. In May, we will be adding a variety of features including full spectator mode, Twitch integration, and support for in-game tournaments with our all-new Gauntlet mode. Gauntlets are limited time in-game tournaments where you create a deck out of the cards in your collection and compete against other players to reach the top of the Gauntlet leaderboard. The length, conditions, and prizes for the Gauntlets will change from month to month. So again, if you're familiar with Hearthstone, it's going to be very similar to their Heroic Tavern Brawls, but instead of it being a week, sounds like it's going to be a month, and it sounds like conditions might change. That seems pretty exciting. Given that they are a longer period and they're going to go month to month, I could see this being like a launching point for like qualifiers for maybe larger tournaments or qualifiers for a bunch of other things like that. That's really exciting. Tournaments, spectator, I think we've all been wanting it for a while. If you haven't seen it, I did a video months back even about why this game needed a tournament mode, because I thought it was going to breathe life into the meta, because preparing for a tournament is drastically different from preparing for just grinding on the ladder. So I'm really excited about that. And I do want to mention real quick, so on Reddit we got some confirmation from Bethesda in terms of like what Twitch integration means. That means that you are potentially going to be earning prizes, I think they called them drops, for watching Twitch streams based on the game. So there are a couple of other games that do this. They reward players for watching those streams. It's, you know, a way for, you know, advertising. Like, let's be honest, it's driving advertising in the form of, hey, come check out our game, watch these other people who are playing it, you might earn something. I think it's a fantastic idea. I mean, as a content creator, I'm super excited, and I look forward to seeing a bunch of people come in and experience the game for the first time. And the other thing, while not tied directly to Twitch integration, but I asked, and Pete Hines actually replied, I had said, you know, it'd be really cool if they did something with Twitch Prime, because that's another way to get some advertising, you know, going, right? Whether it's, you know, some free packs or something through Twitch Prime. And he said not, you know, tied directly to the Twitch integration that they have in mind, but they do have something in the works that's in that vein as well. So that is also very exciting to hear, and I look forward to seeing whatever that reveal is. So the last thing is they did mention that we have another expansion coming as well. I believe they said early summer. Let me re-find it, because they did the Early Brotherhood announcement, or excuse me, the Dark Brotherhood announcement for April 5th, for early April. And then here it is. Stay tuned during E3 this June for the announce of a big expansion coming early this summer, complete with a huge new set of cards, mechanics, and more. So, again, we're getting, you know, 40 new cards and a new story mode here in less than a month, and then we're going to get an announcement in June about a significantly larger expansion. Now, some people thought that our first expansion was going to be Skyrim based because of some previous leaks from a long time ago, and I suspect that that actually might be our first big expansion, since we're getting this, you know, story mode kind of mini adventure expansion right now. But either way, I'm excited for both. One of my favorite things I do is theorycraft, so I'm like chomping at the bit And so without further ado, let's go ahead and look at the stuff that's been teased for Dark Brotherhood already. So I'm going to go ahead and hop on over. This is article number 2, right? The fall of the Dark Brotherhood announced. And so it says there are over 25 missions in the new story, and of course, and over the course of all those missions, you'll earn playsets of 40 new cards. So that's also interesting because there was some question when it was first announced whether or not you would get a copy of the card or playsets. This definitely confirms playsets. Many of these cards will be members of the Dark Brotherhood themselves, such as the Brotherhood Slayer. So here we see him. He is a 3/3 for 3. He has Prophecy, and he has Slay. Put a completed contract into your hand. Now this is interesting for a couple of reasons. One, you see the new Slay ability word, and that is, they say they are now codifying and slightly expanding a mechanic that's already been in the game. Slay effects trigger whenever the creature destroys another creature on your turn. Now, that's important for a couple of reasons. One, there are existing creatures that are likely going to be kind of updated or errated, if you will, to reflect the new codification, right? So Lucien Lachance mentions, when your creatures destroy another creature and survive, they get bigger, right? That will likely instead change to say when they slay a creature. Night Talon Lord, Blood Magic Lord, they do things when they kill a creature that will likely change to say slay. Now the reason they say codifying and expanding, however, is that it says whenever the creature destroys another creature on your turn. And that is very important because it doesn't mean necessarily attacking. Let's say, for example, I have Lucien Lachance on the board, and he has now been recodified for Slay, right? And my opponent has a 1/1, and I play Sharpshooter Scout, and my Sharpshooter Scout does 1 damage to it. It's on my turn, as long as I didn't play it from Prophecy, it's on my turn, and it destroyed the other creature. He would now get the bonus from Lucien in that event. So, creatures that can do damage to other creatures might end up getting a slight buff depending on what other Slay mechanics and interactions end up existing. That's pretty exciting. The other thing that I'm immediately excited for is whether or not we have creatures that might have summon and destroy other creatures, right? It doesn't even have to be damage. It might just say outright destroy. We don't know. So Slay being codified I think makes sense because it takes up less screen real estate. I think that when you hear the word Slay, it's very much like indicating what is occurring, and I think that it allows for cool creatures to be added to the game with like Dragon Slayer effects or Vampire Slayer effects or whatever the case may be. It's going to be very much in theme, and I dig it. So that's sweet. So part 2 of this card, right? It mentions a completed contract, which is a new card, so we do get to see what that is as well. It's a 0-cost action, and you gain 1 magic of this turn. So essentially, it's like, getting the coin from Hearthstone. But it's really interesting and important because it's a 0-cost spell. So we already know that there are, assassin-oriented cards that like actions, and we know that there are things like Swindler Market that enjoys 0-cost spells, and this falls into both categories. It's an agility card, so it can be played in like action assassin decks. It's a 0-cost card. It also means, unless I'm completely off base here, but I don't see why not, it also means that this would be a new option to receive if you play Smuggler's Hall. So that's going to kind of shake things up a bit there as well. The card is a common. In terms of like its usefulness, we don't know enough about the rest of the set. 3/3 for 3 is a pretty common stat line. The Prophecy I think makes it pretty good though. And in certain, ramp strategies or action strategies, I could see where it might find a place. Prophecy alone is enough to make it, draftable in Arena. So it's interesting. It's a good, first reveal, right? Just give us a nice common. Let's keep going. So it says the story you'll be playing through is linked to Cicero's journal. So if you don't remember who Cicero is, he is the murderously mad jester that Skyrim fans will remember. and he also makes use of the Slay mechanic. He is a 6 for a 1/6, but he has lethal. He has Slay, draw 2 cards, which is pretty powerful. And he also has the fun, he can attack friendly creatures. Now, I can see him used in a lot of different decks. I could see him being used in Scout Ramp, right? Just as a engine to draw cards. I could see him used in like Spellsword Token, because he could be the thing that like refills your hand. You know, you kind of vomit things on the board, and then maybe you kill one of your own 1/1s, and ta-da, you get 2 more cards, right? I could see him used in a lot of different ways. What's interesting to me is that he has lethal, so he can help chew through guards. He's got great interaction with Lucian, who's already in the Endurance color, and just kind of overall, I think he's interesting. Now, I will say the 1/6 means Execute is amazing against him, right? So if you expect some Cicero, be prepared to whip out your Execute. You know, whether or not he'll be viable, I don't know, but I could certainly see places where I would try to include him. He is a unique hero, or a unique legendary creature, I guess I should say. So that means that this is at least one new creature to add to your chances of Heroic Rebirth activations. So once the new set goes live, variance goes up for that card. Let's continue. So they go on to say that most of the Dark Brotherhood cards will continue to be represented in Endurance and Agility, but they are spreading out, and as such they show us this common, which is a 0-cost action, and it's in Intelligence, so that should ring some bells for, again, Action Assassin, ring some bells for, again, maybe Swindler's Market, Assassin, etc. And this says you equip a +1/+0 steel dagger to a random friendly creature in each lane. So it could potentially have some uses in, you know, item-based decks. Again, potentially a card you get from Smuggler's Hall because it's a 0 cost. I find this one particularly interesting because when you compare it to something like Healing Hands or Improvised Weapon, granted those cards do increase the toughness of those creatures, and in the case of Healing Hands it can potentially, you know, heal them, obviously, but this one is a 0-cost card that has the potential to give you +2 power, right? You have to have a creature in each lane, but it's a slightly bigger swing. It's interesting. So coming further down, well, went a little too far. We'll get to that one in a minute. We get a couple more commons. One is Underworld Vigilante. So this is a 4/1 charge for 5 with a really weird but kind of interesting summon. So summon enemy creatures in this lane, lose cover. So it doesn't have the toughness of, say, a Cliff Racer, right? But what it does in its place is it makes it so that you can target maybe high priority things that people are trying to hide in the shadow lane. It's interesting, right? It's also in strength, so it's going to benefit from Northwind Outpost and, you know, all those other things that people are playing in, you know, strength-based charge synergy decks. So, you know, I think there's certainly like room for this. But it's interesting, right? Like you're sacrificing 3 health, you know, again comparing it to Cliff Racer, to be able to target something that is potentially in the shadow lane. It is a common, so that part's important, especially when you start thinking about things like Arena. I think it'll certainly see play in Arena. It's basically removal at that point. It's 5 to do 4. Yeah, interesting. The other card here is Sanctuary Raid. So this is destroy an enemy creature. Give all friendly creatures in its lane +1/+1, and this costs 7. So obviously more expensive than a Piercing Javelin. Does not have prophecy like a Piercing Javelin, but it can pump your squad in a friendly lane. This screams like high-end removal for, again, maybe like a token Spellsword deck or something else where you're flooding the board. 7 might be a little too late for this to be viable. But I can certainly see a scenario where you're trying to flood the board. They play their big guy, Hive Defender or whatever the case may be, and then you Sanctuary Raid to blow up the guy that was in your way and pump your squad all in one go. Yeah, so it's a common. Whether or not it's viable, I mean, my instincts tell me 7's probably too expensive, but who knows, right? We got all sorts of new cards we're going to see. And then the last one. So this is the card that you're going to get a premium version of if you do pre-order. And you get the Night Mother. It's a neutral support. It's unique. Costs 2. And oh boy is this interesting. Has unlimited uses. Activate. Summon a 0/1 target. Right? I assume it's going to be a little card with like a target on it. With guard for your opponent. Now what's interesting here is that it doesn't say like at random, so I'm kind of curious whether or not you even get to pick the lane. But you summon a guard for your opponent, and you can do that as many times as you want. So why would you want to do that? Well, it says once 20 enemy creatures have died, deal 20 damage to your opponent, gain 20 health, and draw up to 10 cards. So 10 cards is your maximum hand size. I imagine this just lets you draw to max cards in hand. But that's assuming that you just haven't already won because you just did 20 damage to your opponent and gained 20 health. Oh boy. So right away my instincts tell me that this means you have to kill 20 creatures after this has been summoned. This would be a nightmare in control if it counted creatures that had died previous to this being played. Because 20 creatures is not really a lot if you're playing like a control deck. But even if you play this and you never get to the big payoff, right? There is potential for you to get a lot of good uses out of it. So we've already seen Slay being codified in this set. We can only assume that means we're going to see more creatures with Slay. And this is a fantastic way to kind of donate creatures to your opponent for you to slay with 0 repercussions because they're just 0/1s. It's also great ways for you to drain and gain some health as a control player without giving your opponent runes as a result. I mean, unless it's Night Shadow, right? But for your typical drain, give them an 0/1, whack it, and gain a bunch of health, right? So, very, very interesting card. Whether or not it'll be viable will depend, I think, largely on the quality of Slay creatures, whether or not we see some new useful drain creatures, and whether or not there's changes to, say, like Shadowfen Priest, right? Like, let's be honest, the ubiquity of Shadowfen Priest and Endurance decks right now is a real damper on this card, so we'll kind of have to see where that goes. But yeah, it's interesting to say the least. So those are what have been teased so far. I'm really excited. Even if none of these cards ends up being playable or viable, just the fact that we're seeing new stuff is exciting. I can't wait for April 5th. Hopefully we're going to get some more teasers along the way, so keep an eye out for that. And yeah, as always, I guess I will hopefully see you next time, and hopefully you share the same excitement that I do. I'm like literally giddy. So yeah, thanks.